From Kiwibanana, and today I have come up to Auckland. This is a place in New Zealand to go to an animal law conference, and unfortunately I'm not able to film during the conference. I asked for permission, and I think they're going to record some of it and maybe run some seminars on it for future use. It's run by the New Zealand Animal Law Association. So yeah, you would have seen some of my footage of me flying here and then travelling over here, and so I might as well tell you who's going to be speaking. So Jane Goodall is going to be there, Dr. Jane Goodall. She's done a lot of work with chimpanzees. I had to write the rest of them down because I'm going to forget and I don't want to say the wrong thing. So we've also got Michael Kirby, who's a judge from Australia. We've got Marcelo, who's an animal law lecturer at the University of Otago. Sorry about the sound, they're doing a little bit of construction work here today. We've got Natalie Walker, who's a Crown Solicitor. We've got Mike Bodie, who's a prosecutions counsel. And we've got Danielle Duffield, who's the president of the New Zealand Animal Law Association. And we've got Vernon Tava, who is like a local city council board member, and they're all going to talk around a range of topics. Some people are going to talk about conservation, some people are going to be talking about the Animal Welfare Act, some people are going to be talking about animal rights and their sort of legal standing. So there should be a range of opinions, I'd say, and also a range of sort of expertise that people will be able to offer. So I'm probably going to leave this here. I'm going to see if I can capture maybe a few little snippets here and there, maybe get some photos. I've only flown up for today and I'm flying out again today, so unfortunately I can't really take you anywhere to the really cool Auckland vegan food places because there's a few of them around. They are providing a lunch here, and I've heard that it's all going to be vegan, so that is awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna I better go in. Hopefully I can find a electronic point that I can plug my phone into so that it doesn't die, and so that I can still continue to capture some more footage and find my way back to the bus stop and back home. So first up was Jane Goodall. So good old Jane. I'm sure many of you have heard of her before. If not, I will, I'm going to leave some links of these people in the description box down below. And so Jane, of course, has done a lot of work with chimpanzees and apes in general, and her research is, of course, more scientific based than law based. And she did say, hey, look, I don't come from a legal background, and she said she felt really privileged to be able to be there and speak at the conference. And it was just a really good start to the conference to have her there and just talk about some of her work. And of course there was, when she started out a lot of her work, there was a lot of misunderstanding and also sort of questionable things about animals and animal science. And of course, like, we've progressed so fast from when she started, which is great. And so that was really really interesting and quite heartfelt to hear her talk of some stories and experiences that she'd had with some of the apes. Danielle spoke, and she is the president of the New Zealand Animal Law Association. So with them putting on the event, of course it made sense for her to speak, and it was really good to actually hear her speak. I had seen some of her interactions through various vegan Facebook groups in New Zealand, and it was really good to actually see her face to face speaking to a crowd of people, and I guess seeing her her passion really sort of come alive. She said she didn't really believe that there would be that many people that would be interested in coming, and in the legal profession and outside the legal profession. And I think it really amazed her. It was really good to see that she was, that her passion really was coming alive. Now, she talked a lot about the Animal Welfare Act in New Zealand, And of course the Animal Welfare Act is what the Animal Welfare Act, it talks about animal welfare. It's not necessarily animal rights, animal liberation, but it's still very important to have discussions around the current law and obviously what we can do with the current law to try and make some sort of progressions. And just in case you didn't know, New Zealand have recently recognised animal sentience in that, kind of like within that statute. I'm not going to get into legal jargon and all that sort of stuff in this video. I don't think it's really necessary. And of course, you know, for some of you, you're going, well, duh. Of course, we've known that animals have sentience, and we've known that for quite a while now. But for that to be actually finally recognised in a legal statute is, I think, a great thing. It's definitely also, the Act has had some progression in the fact that we have banned animal testing in New Zealand. However, people can still sell products here that have been tested on animals overseas. So, you know, it's just, once again, it's sort of like it's covering some animal protection, but it's not covering all. So of course that's something that we need to work further towards. And you know, it was just really good to I guess hear Danielle speak about this. I know that that she's she appears to be vegan, so I guess you could say she is vegan, and to hear her standing there talking about animals and, you know, and with her legal expertise, although she's only new to the law industry, and I mean I'm not a practicing lawyer, so I could say I have hardly any sort of experience other than obviously what I get told in a room as a form of like a lecture, etc., etc. But it was really good, you know, to see this, you know, young person be able to speak about law and animals and how we can use the current framework. And she did, of course, talk about how there's a lot of loopholes and there's a lot of things that people can use to get around, and not necessarily good loopholes. They were, you know, they're kind of like loopholes that people could use as an excuse to harm animals, which is kind of sad. And of course, because of Danielle's sort of background, she thought it was also important to make sure that we are talking about farmed animals, because there's often quite a lot of talk about wildlife and companion animals. However, there's not a lot of talk about what's going on with the farm animals. People are not that interested, or I guess they're just, it's easier to look at those other types of animals, and of course animals being tested on. So yes, I actually really want to give a special thank you to Danielle for to really putting this all together. And she's now going to go and do some more research, and I think she's maybe going to Harvard, so that is going to be, it's going to be exciting to see if she comes back and what sort of work and what she's going to do next. And we had Natalie talk, and she is a Crown solicitor situated in South Auckland. And for those of you who don't know, South Auckland tends to be at the lower socio-economic end area, scale, goes whatever you like to call it, in Auckland. And so a lot of her work is obviously around things like drugs, gangs, violence, a lot less the white collar crime, more of this sort of everyday criminal, I shouldn't say everyday, it's belittle, but criminal crime, criminal law. But she still does obviously have she has an interest in animals and the law, and she can definitely see some things happening, those sort of correlations with I guess domestic violence and violence against animals. There has obviously been a lot of science, not a lot of science, but there has been some research done, and they are seeing some connections there with I guess violence against family members and things like that, and violence against animals. And you do sometimes hear stories about people who have abused animals as a child and grow up to be murderous. You know, to me, I've heard that one so many times. That might be new to you, I'm unsure, but it is definitely something that people sort of talk about. And she also did talk about a little bit about how people are, I guess she used the word deluded, to thinking that they are really helping these animals by taking, you know, maybe it's someone like a crazy cat lady taking on all these cats, but they're failing to see that maybe what they're doing is actually harming the animals.
So she did talk a little bit about that, which was something that I didn't think would be discussed. So it was interesting to hear that being discussed and being talked about as well. And so we had Mike there, and he works for DOC, otherwise known as Department of Conservation, and he works for prosecuting people, and a lot of his focus is around wildlife animals, marine mammals. They often also cover a lot of hunting issues. So I guess, you know, it wouldn't be an animal law conference without talking about those types of animals. We have laws in place in New Zealand where we, I guess you could say, are quite speciest, but things like these animals that he talked about, especially the native wildlife ones that are endangered, and a lot of our marine mammals, if you were to even sort of disrupt their environment, or, you know, even try and touch some of them, you would, you know, you could literally be charged on the spot, you know, for interrupting with these animals. So basically what I'm trying to say is that we do have quite a hardline approach with certain animals that I guess we deem to be more special, and they often also get into a bit of trouble with the hunters. So there's some, I guess that's a video I could do for another day. There's often they can often sit in the middle of a few things, Department of Conservation, that can obviously get themselves looked at not so nicely, but that's a video for another day. So that was really good, I guess, to hear him talk about that. And he definitely was saying that the key with the Department of Conservation is obviously being able to get as much photographic evidence as possible, because that can really just sort of bring it home to the judge, you know, when you're standing there in the court and you've got these visual things to show them, okay, like, this is the bird, this is, you know, this is what it looked like when it died, this is the damage that the bird occurred on these parts of its body, like, these are the guns. So it's really showing that sort of thing to the judge can really bring it home. Also, on a side note, he did talk about, obviously, that you know, convincing judges is, well, not convincing them, but more or less getting them to really recognise what is going on is actually not very good. You know, how am I going to put this? I guess we generally have more compassion possibly to humans than to animals, and then again to different types of animals of different levels. So I guess they were just, you know, trying to say that it can be really important to try and get the judge to see that that this is worth a case seeing to. It's not just, why would you waste all this time and energy trying to prosecute someone for killing one bird, you know, that sort of thing. So it was really good to, I guess, hear him talk about how they try and convince the judge with the photographic evidence, and that can be really crucial. Panel, she didn't give a speech on its own, but she still had some really good inputs to put in towards the discussion. She does a lot of work for the SPCA, which is, I don't know how to put it, they're kind of like a welfare group that tries to look after the welfare of animals. And so she does, yeah, obviously does a little bit of work for them. She also does a little bit of work with the Ministry of Primary Industries, which doesn't always get the best name for those that really love animals, but that is a video for another day. And so it was good to hear her talk about that. I think she was only sort of probably only been in the legal industry within the last sort of 5 years, so it was good to hear, you know, another young voice up there speaking about how we can obviously work within the law or make further progressions in the law. Now, Honourable Michael Kirby also spoke, and he is a retired Australian judge, and he has done a lot of work around factory farming, live exports. He's also done a lot of work with human rights issues, UN, and some work with North Korea and their human rights issues. And so he was of a lot of legal experience, I guess you could say. And I was not expecting him to say the things that he did when he was speaking, and not in a bad way. It was actually really good to hear him talking about obviously what he's interested in, but also some of his own personal beliefs. He he spoke about how only in recent years he'd read a book, something about animal slaughter, what goes on in a slaughterhouse, and it was just like, it was kind of like a legal book, but it was talking about the processes and things that the animals have to go through, and it really kind of made him think about his food choices. And so he's gone vegetarian, which is a great step. It's definitely a great step in the right direction, and I do not want to belittle him because he hasn't gone vegan. I think, for someone of his age as well, it's really hard, I would imagine, after so many years of, indoctrination of, this is how you eat, this is what you should eat, you need to eat this, this and this, this is what you've been sold, basically the story that's been sold to you, and then to say, hang on a sec, I actually have been possibly fooled here, or I've actually possibly been wrong. And for someone, at his age to say, to look at that and go, actually, I may have been doing things in a not good, it's time for me to make a change. So it was really good to him to talk about that. And he said, he made some funny things about how he's heard that vegan cake is the best cake in the world, and that he thinks that if you are, vegan, vegetarian, whatever, that you should not be afraid to speak about it, and that you should to speak about it with confidence. And I was just I was really applauded by what he said, and it just really kind of, it was just like throwing another, I was not expecting that from him at all, and it was really good to for him to talk about that. And like he's in his partner is the same gender as him, so he's gay, so he talked a little bit about that as well, which was really good, just sort of how he's seen obviously the progression over the time, and talked a little about religion and religions, certain religions change and view on certain issues too, and how that really gave him some hope. And especially with excuse me, I'm really bad with the names, but with the Pope speaking in the last couple of years about animals, and that's been really good too, because he says he is Christian, so things like that do make a difference in Christians' lives, that's a word. People who are religious, it can really make a big difference if someone that they really look up to in their religion starts speaking about animals, obviously, and speaks about them in a good way, and encourages people to cause less harm to them. So the next speaker is Rogerius. I'm a terrible person. I cannot pronounce his name. I am so sorry. And so he spoke, and he teaches probably the only animal law classes, should I say, in New Zealand, in the universities. However, I think Waikato University may have just started one for summer school or something like that, but he is the only one that basically gets to talk about animal law just as a class of its own at a university, and that's in Otago, which is in the sort of southern part of New Zealand. And so he really got to talk about obviously his work and what the things that he's seen changing, and it was just really good to see someone who's so passionate about it, to be able to talk about it. And of course they're trying to build an animal lab down there. I've talked about it a little bit in a video before, and so they're wanting to obviously stop that, or the New Zealand Anti-Vivisection Society, people like himself as well, and of course people like myself are wanting to stop that, because it's coming out of, it's $50 million of taxpayers' money going towards an animal lab, which is not very good science. There's a lot of other ways that we can do research to improve our own health that doesn't even involve animals, and that can actually be more reliable. However, it's a work in progress, and fingers crossed that that we can hopefully get somewhere with that. So yeah, it's really good to hear him speak. And a lot of the times when in New Zealand, a lot of the lecturers do tend to be of a certain age and older. And I'm not trying to be ageist here, but and I guess it kind of makes sense, you know, obviously with experience and time, eventually you can then, you know, be a professor and talk about things to other students at a university and things like that. But he was actually more of a sort of I don't think he was, you know, it wasn't like the guy was 60 years old. He was still quite young, and he was a professor, and he's still, you know, he's talking about animal law, and like that is really good, because for all we know, next 5 years, maybe every single university in New Zealand has a professor that gets to take an animal law class. And I imagine that every law school in New Zealand having a professor talking about animal law, like that would make a serious difference. I know for myself that if I had been offered an animal law class at my law school, I would have absolutely taken it. I would have done all I could to take that class. And of course I'm gutted that the opportunity like that just is not there at the moment. But it was just really really refreshing, and fingers crossed that every law school in New Zealand soon has a professor talking about animal law. So next we had Vernon talking, and he is actually getting into government. So he has been a lawyer, he is a lawyer, but he just doesn't practice law. So he's enrolled as a barrister and solicitor, but not practicing. And so he has a bit of involvement, obviously, with the law. You know, being in politics, law is always, it's just there. I mean, law is in everything that we do. But you definitely, you know, when you're involved in politics, law is like a big part of what you do, I guess. And so he actually spoke a lot about like local iwi and things like that, and their sort of perspective on environment and animals and natural resources and things like that. And he spoke a lot about the sort of concept of legal personhood. And I did forget to mention, a lot of these speakers did mention Stephen Wise quite a bit, and he's done a lot of work with the Non-Human Animal Project in the USA and trying to get legal personhood for certain animals. And maybe it's a video for another day. But yeah, so he brought up again Stephen Wise, and so did many of the other speakers, and they really sort of, he started to talk about some of the cases. And there has been a case recently where they were granting a river, I guess, legal personhood. I don't know, I mean, some could be of the view like that's an awesome thing, and some people are probably on the view of, oh my god, you gave a river legal personhood before you even thought about giving an animal legal personhood. So I can see where both sides are coming from. You know, obviously this is a huge step in maybe the right direction, and others are going, well, whoa, what the hell, did we just miss the whole animal thing and just go straight to natural resources? You know, well, rivers all of a sudden having legal personhoods and things like that over other beings that have more sentience, yada yada yada. But I'm unsure whether legal personhood is the good thing or not. And there's obviously talk around, you know, is that the right way to go about granting, you know, animals better care, rights, liberation. You know, wherever you stand on that sort of line. But it was still good that it was being discussed, and you know, if it was to be applied to animals, how could it be applied? Would it work? And I guess I should probably tell you, especially if you're not from New Zealand, the waterways in New Zealand are very much a hot topic. It's definitely talked about a lot in regards to environmental issues and in regards to local iwi. So like the Māori people of New Zealand definitely have they have a great connection with the water and things like that, and they are, you know, often thinking about, you know, is this the best thing for our waterway and our ecosystems, and you know, and all that sort of stuff. So it's really good to have you know, the Māori people on that side really thinking about environment and really pushing for, you know, for better care of the environment. Obviously, you know, with better care of a river, there's going to be there could possibly be better care of the animals living in the river, which, you know, is a great step in the right direction as well. So that is the rundown of what everybody that was there, well, that was on the stage and talking and giving presentations or even talking on panels. I absolutely loved the conference. I would love to see something like this happening more regularly, and maybe even not just in one location in New Zealand. And I mean, it would be great to have things like this happening all over the world. And, you know, and they definitely, the conference, they brought to light that it was very important that, you know, yes, there's lawyers, there's these professors, there's these people that, you know, that are creating policies, you know, they're in local government, and, you know, and there's these people that are, you know, prosecuting and you know, so all of these that are kind of like, we're from the legal profession or in the legal profession, and this big need to obviously work with scientists and, you know, be able to work with other expertise that can obviously help these laws get better, close loopholes, you know, that are obviously bad loopholes, and just try and see if we can work better more in a team, whatever you like to call it, a collaborative effort. Because, you know, once you've got science on your side, it's kind of harder to argue, you know, well, why the hell do we have that law if it's not actually beneficial to, you know, this and this, and, you know, what's the whole purpose of the law is to be beneficial to this and this. So, yeah, so that is, I don't know, I feel like I could talk about this for ages. I think that's gone on probably, yeah, it's gone on long enough. I'm going to try and, you know, edit this down for you so we can get a little bit more shorter. And, you know, let me know if you have been to an animal law conference yourself, whether you're organising one in your local community, whether you want one happening soon, somewhere near where you live, possibly, obviously. I don't know, maybe you want an excuse to travel somewhere and just go to an animal law conference there. Whatever. I will see you soon, and I hope you've done something that makes you happy today. See ya.